You're watching the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Senior. Hope all of Laker Nation is having a phenomenal week. We're diving into the latest Lakers news and rumors, and still a lot of storylines developing following the NBA trade deadline, which was a week ago on Thursday. How about Christian Wood of the Houston Rockets nearly getting dealt to the Los Angeles Lakers? This coming from Ramona Shelburne on Brian Windhorse's podcast. By the way, Windy with a really good win over Adrian Wojnarowski when it came to the reporting on the James Harden-Ben Simmons trade. But Shelburne was on his podcast and talked about how the Lakers almost traded for Christian Wood at the deadline, a player who I really like. Kind of an Anthony Davis light type of player, but that deal did fall through due to luxury tax implications. Rob Pelinka in Los Angeles wound up not making moves at the NBA trade deadline. So right now, this is a team below 500 shifting their focus to the NBA buyout market. This coming from Dave McMenamin as we do our Lakers roundup right here on the Lakers Report. There was an iteration of the John Wall trade that included Christian Wood that would have involved more money. I've been told from other sources in Houston that there was a message that the Lakers were not willing to take on more money. Obviously, as we know, they're pretty tight with the cash. Ramona Shelburne saying this: that's kind of the word around the league that the Lakers were making calls. If there was a trade that made sense, they would do it. I've heard it described as maybe half-hearted efforts. They would do something if it was low-hanging fruit, but they weren't really willing to feel any pain, whether that was luxury tax money, whether that was more an encumberment in the future, whether that was draft compensation. In other words, they called, they tried to do some things, but there wasn't a sense of that kind of urgency. I think you heard from the players the night of the Milwaukee game, and especially after that Portland game, they kind of knew that the Lakers were going in this direction. Now, let's focus in on Christian Wood here for a moment. Only 26 years old, just turned 26 back in September. Really good player. He can shoot the three. He can mix it up down low on the low block. Gives you a lot of versatility at that 4-5 spot with the way that he plays offense, but also the positional versatility in addition to that. 19 points per game so far throughout his Houston stint. 10 rebounds per, shooting a little shy of 50% from the floor, and 37% from beyond the arc. Now, that number from distance, much better than what Anthony Davis is giving you. But if the Lakers were to trade for Christian Wood and not deal away Anthony Davis, what the hell would that front court look like? That on-court pairing would actually be pretty weird between Christian Wood and Anthony Davis because they're both athletic for their size. They can put the ball on the floor. Both can shoot it from three, even though Anthony Davis has been struggling in that area this year. And defensively, AD, no question, the better player. He's a generational unicorn type of player on both ends, especially defensively, given his athleticism. But we know that AD isn't really all that hype about playing the 5 spot. He likes to play the 4. And I think Christian Wood, while he can play both positions, figures in a little bit better on this team playing the 4. So that positional fit, I think, could get a little bit clunky because both players kind of clash in terms of their on-court pairing. I say all of that, and I segue to this question for the audience because here on the Lakers Report, we're all about the audience interaction. Did you want the Lakers to make a deal at the NBA trade deadline to somewhat improve this roster? I think the overwhelming answer is yes, so if that's the case, go ahead and type your Y. If it's on the other side and you want to say no, then type your N for no. Next up on the show, Lakers not giving up hope on Russell Westbrook. Well, really, at this point for Los Angeles, they don't have a point. This once again coming from Ramona Shelburne, who talked about Russell Westbrook and this year just not being good in Los Angeles. I think the Lakers are not ready to pull the ripcord on that Russell Westbrook experiment, she said. I think they feel like the team, the coach, the coaching staff, everybody is not done enough to say this isn't going to work. Russell Westbrook is a future Hall of Famer. There are different ways that he can be used. By the way, some of this is on Russ too. Russ can still change more, but I think that they feel like they gave up so much to get him, and he is a really talented player if used correctly, and he has not been used in any kind of way he's comfortable with or has been used or been good before in that type of role. Really, at this point, as I talked about, Lakers don't have much of a choice. And yes, while the coaching staff can be blamed for the Russell Westbrook experiment not paying big dividends, Russell Westbrook can be blamed as well because he's never had a good feel for the game, and he continues to make some of these baffling decisions in the really critical moments of the game where you're like, you've been in the league for well over a decade, you cannot be making these mistakes, yet he continues to make some of those aforementioned mistakes. Now, I did like how Los Angeles used him in that game against the Golden State Warriors. Part of that is probably due to coaching. Part of that is also on Russell Westbrook because he played as though he was a pass-first guy. He played as though that was his role, and he wasn't going for the gut punch. He wasn't trying to kick your stones. He wasn't trying to slash your throat, which is what part of what makes Russell Westbrook great, but on the other side, that's what makes him so frustrating as well. Now, make sure you subscribe to the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. Even though the NBA trade deadline is in the rear view, we continue to have you covered right here on the channel. Non-stop Lakers news and rumors all year and during the offseason. Plus, we ain't behind a paywall, folks. This is 100% free. So if you want to stay in the know with all things Los Angeles Lakers, the solution is very simple. Just hit that red subscribe button down below. On Monday, we said with every video this week, we're going to give shout-outs to some of our loyal subscribers who make what we do possible. Arthur, shout out to you. Eric Lee, JC, Rick, and Nigel. You guys are the best for continuing to support everything that we do. Without you, what we do would not be possible. Let's take a gander at the Western Conference standings to see where the Lakers stand with this confusing and confounding season up to this point. Phoenix, really with a nice little stranglehold in that number 1 spot. And then there you see the Los Angeles Lakers all the way back at number 9. A lot of room to make up in order to really put them in a position to make a deep playoff run, but to get out of that NBA play-in tournament for the second consecutive year. And as we saw last year, it's not a place you want to be, especially with the roster that's been somewhat injury-prone. Because, look, let's face it. I mean, you get home court advantage, you get a higher seed, the odds go in your favor automatically, and your title chances certainly improve. And if your title chances don't improve, your opportunity to just advance in the playoffs and further solidify your standing in the West improves a lot. I cannot believe we're at a point where the Lakers are 26-31, 9th place in the West. But this has really been a very difficult and maddening season for Los Angeles. So considering that, who do you blame more? Is it the team? Is it the front office? I know Frank Vogel has often been made the scapegoat, but he shouldn't be the scapegoat, man. The front office put this team together. I'm typing my F for front office. I didn't love what the Lakers did this offseason. I grew to like it over time because I'm like, you know what? LeBron's 37 years old. You're putting together a team that's ready to win right now. But I said it all along. Didn't like the Russ trade, not enough shooting, and that has really reared its ugly head. While Russell Westbrook cannot be traded this year, can he be traded after this year if the Lakers want to rid themselves of the Russell Westbrook experiment and get rid of that salary? That's what's coming up next on the Lakers Report. But first, as we always do, we want to tell you about another good deal to get yourself really hooked up with some Lakers swag. Head to chatsports.com/LAL hoodie for this really nice Lakers Nike hoodie. The material on point. You can get this in black or purple. Multiple sizes available. Just plug in that link down below. Thanks to our friends at Fanatics, and you can get yourself hooked up with some Lakers gear. Russ to the OKC Thunder. Could he be going back to OKC where he started his career, made it to the NBA Finals, and nearly got back there a couple of years ago when Kevin Durant was with him in OKC before bolting for Golden State? John Hollinger of The Athletic with this. One tantalizing possibility, for instance, would be to trade Derek Favors and another small contract to the Lakers for Russell Westbrook and an unprotected Lakers first in 2027, a deal which would generate a ginormous Lakers trade exception to bring in other talent via their newly available 2029 first. They could also swallow Tobias Harris in one gulp, although Philadelphia is out of picks to include, or Davis Bertans, or some other desperately unwanted contract. For OKC, I think it would be Russell Westbrook's contract that would be desperately unwanted. This is a young team that has a bunch of really intriguing pieces. Lou Dort, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey going into this draft was my favorite passer in this draft class. A less athletic Ben Simmons who has the size of Simmons and the passing ability of Ben. can, just not the athletic ability. So I don't know why the OKC Thunder would bring in Russell Westbrook unless they just wanted to dump him and serve as a salary dumping destination for Los Angeles. I don't see how Russ is a long-term fit with LA, and I don't see how he's a long-term fit with OKC. Right now, right before our eyes, we have seen a fastly declining player who, because of his lack of shooting ability and his inefficiency shooting the rock, the game to a certain degree has passed him by. Now, the raw numbers are always going to be there for Russ, even as he continues to age. 18 points per game this year, almost 8 boards, 7.5 dimes, but it's the efficiency. It's the eye test. Sometimes he just makes these decisions that make you sit back in your couch and you're like, Russ, you did it again. But Russ has been doing this for a long time. As Jack Lauderay would say, Russ, what are you doing? So do you think the Lakers will trade Russ this offseason? My last question for you before we wrap up another episode here on the Lakers Report. 1 for yes, 2 for no. I think the answer from a lot of you is I want the Lakers to trade Russ, but sound off in the comment section. And thanks for watching today's show.